2. Okay, I'll take my nose real quick. Oh shit, all right. What is going on, guys? So we have a little bit of a different setup tonight due to some issues with technology, which I am not the most technology savvy person. Tonight we are going to say fuck it and improvise it because D&D is all about improv, right? So we're going to go ahead and improv this. So today I'm accompanied by the good old Keith from Fire and Dice. Keith, how you doing today, brother?
Great, how you doing?
Good, man. I'd be a lot better if these computer problems weren't happening.
I know how you're really doing right now.
Yeah, I'm actually, like 30 seconds ago, I was cussing like a sailor, so that's how I'm really doing.
Camera's calm now.
Exactly. But tonight, we are accompanied by the awesome, the talented, the beautiful, and wonderful Dice Ministry. We got Melissa, a.k.a. RPG Yogi.
How's it going, guys?
And then we also have Nick, who is the DM of their group, the Dice Ministries.
You're also beautiful and talented, Nick.
No, I am the talent and beautiful, but it's okay.
Oh.
It's fine.
I was actually referring to... Anyway, so...
Sure. Thanks, guys. I'm just going to go now.
So, very excited to have you guys on. I know whenever I very first kind of got into this realm, it was, Epic Gym, Fire and Dice. It was your guys' page that I came across. So it's absolutely awesome to be talking to you guys tonight. So thank you for taking a minute out of your busy schedules to chat with a nerd like me.
Absolutely. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. Yeah.
Of course. So, all right. So we've been kind of conducting these interviews with a few different people. And what we really start off with is just how did you guys get started in D&D? What does D&D mean to you? But I guess the main question is, what was it that initially got you guys started in this realm?
I'll go first. So I did not grow up with tabletop games, RPGs, any nerdy outlet. I didn't know those things existed until I was in my mid-20s and someone introduced me to Magic the Gathering, actually. Oh. So I played that on and off for a couple months, and it was fine, but I really wanted something like more immersive, right? You lay down your cards, but no one ever described what they were doing with their characters or anything like that. So it was kind of just felt like playing a board game. Yeah. I actually got introduced to D&D through iTunes. It kept recommending podcasts for me to listen to, and I didn't know what they were, and it was so annoying. It just kept recommending these podcasts over and over, the same ones. I was like, fine, I'll listen to these podcasts, and it ended up being Live Play D&D, and I got hooked. I was like, I have to play this, and I just started putting out my feelers, like who around me plays D&D, and I jumped into DMing almost immediately because nobody wants to DM. So if you want to play, you have to DM. I found a few groups that didn't really align with my play style. They were kind of like on the two extremes of the spectrum. And then I saw a picture on Instagram of a group of girls. You weren't even in the picture. A group of girls that said, you know, this is our D&D night, and said Phoenix. And I was like, oh, cool, like other local nerds. And I just left a comment, was like, hey, local nerds, how's it going? Like, I love D&D too. That's it. And I get a message from the channel director or creator, Len, and he was like, hey, you want to come on and play on our channel as a guest? I said, yep. That channel was Dice Ministry, and it was pretty much all over since then.
When was that?
Yeah. When was that?
Yeah.
About almost a year ago. And I've only been playing D&D for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's awesome.
It is.
Real quick, you weren't one of the original Dice Ministry, or Crit Chicks.
Nope. I'm fairly new.
The earlier episodes, and I don't remember seeing you in there. Okay.
Yeah, I originally went on their Sunday night game called Natural One, and I played on that for a while, but everyone's schedules kind of rearranged, and they had an opening on Wednesday, so I joined that maybe
it's been
4, 5,
It's been more than that. It's been a couple months now.
It's been a few months that I've
Yeah.
been with them, and it's fantastic. I love playing with a group of all women.
Yeah.
Well, mostly.
So that kind of leads me to my next question, which is the elephant in the room. Nick, what the fuck are you doing, man?
He doesn't even know.
I mean, are you just like a sucker for punishment? I mean,
He's a
what's going on?
sadist.
So honestly, all the punishment that I take on Crit Chicks happens when the cameras aren't rolling. So on breaks or before the stream starts, like you'd think a group of women playing D&D, you wouldn't hear a single dick joke.
Oh no.
You get 6 of them together, and all of a sudden, that's all they talk about. Like, it's always between like no one sees this on stream, but honestly, I'm very lucky. We actually took our time, and we put our feelers on Facebook or wherever we could to find a cast for the show, and I lucked out. I have 6 great role players, so it's actually very easy. When it comes to like at the table, all of the difficult part of my life right now is my game prep, because I know they're going to ask me a million questions and grill me until I have exhausted every amount of creativity in my brain. But no, they're great. They're great. I love it. Love it.
It's awesome,
So
man.
how did you get to be the DM on Dice Ministry on one of the shows? How did that
So
go?
I'm one of 2 DMs, full-time DMs, if you will. Our Sunday night show, Len, the guy who started the whole channel, he DMs our Sunday night show, and Natural One. And I played on that for a long time. And, eventually work schedules screwed that up, and I couldn't play anymore. But one day, one of our players approached me, Len and I, and was like, I want to start an all-girl stream, and I want Nick to be the DM. And sure, yeah, let's do this.
Who said this?
Yeah. And then Crit Chicks is now a thing.
Who originally approached you with the idea of the all-girl stream?
So one of our players from Natural One, who's no longer on the show, work schedules, again, life happens.
Yeah.
She approached me, but it was actually Danny who
Dewbug 351.
Dewbug 351. She plays Luell, the druid tabaxi on Crit Chicks. It was her idea. And she wasn't even part of the show yet. It was her idea, and through a friend, she kind of passed it on to us, and she was one of the first people cast on the show.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. It's nice.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So, Nick, how did you? So let's go back a little bit. So, how did you? You are a veteran, correct?
Surprisingly, probably not as veteran as you think. Oh, I mean, veteran like combat, like military vet.
Yeah, you were in the military, correct?
Oh yes, that kind of veteran. Yes, I was in the Marine Corps. I was an infantry rifleman from 07 to 11. In the
Well, thank you very much for your service. I appreciate that. But so, where did D&D kind of come into play with yourself? I mean, was this something that you did overseas? Was this something that kind of like came on about afterwards? How did you kind of stumble upon this? And obviously, whatever you did worked very well, because not only were you a talented player, but you're also an incredibly talented DM.
Well, thank you, first off. But yeah, it all started, actually, my dad played when I was a kid.
Okay.
He played AD&D from the 80s. I never played. I never got into it. I asked him, I was like, hey, I want to play. I was like 8 or 9 years old, and he handed me a stack of books, and he was like, read these. And I was like,
Okay.
no, no, thank you. But this is a couple years ago. My wife and I, we were watching YouTube one day. We were just going through videos, I forgot what we were watching on YouTube. And my wife's a big fan of Supernatural, the show Supernatural. And of course, I'm a fan because my wife's a fan. But I was a big fan of the character Charlie, who's played by Felicia Day. And I was scrolling through YouTube one day, and I saw Felicia Day plays Dungeons and Dragons, and I was like,
What?
let's check this out. And it ended up being Critical Role. So as like everyone else, Critical Role kind of got me hooked. We watched the episode that she was in, and it was just like fun. Let's do this. Let's play this. And we started to. We found someone who DM'd. We got a bunch of players together. We were all first-time players, and that was 2.5 years ago now, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I feel like Critical Role has left such an impact on this whole entire community,
Yeah.
and I think it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's absolutely amazing to see the resurgence that D&D has had. Like I know, like for me personally, I played starting from when I was 12 years old all up to a full-blown adult,
Nice.
and whenever I was younger, I like completely hit it. Like I played World of Warcraft, D&D, but I did not tell a single soul because I didn't want to be labeled as a nerd, and it just wasn't a cool thing to do. And then I think personally, I feel like it wasn't until recently that D&D is like not only is it cool, but also like people want to play it. People are like, oh shit, yeah, I've been hearing about that.
Yeah.
Like, can I play with you guys? Like so Keith and I have talked in previous episodes about how it's excellent that D&D Beyond is a pretty big forums from which you can go on and looking for players, looking for Dungeon Master, things like that. I put up something on there probably 3 or 4 months ago, just that we were losing 2 players and that we were looking to seek more people. And I kid you not, I literally just got an email today from someone that's looking to start playing D&D. And I haven't deleted the post just because it's already there, but I've probably had 12 people reach out to me, and that's in the Tampa Bay area that want to play D&D. So it's absolutely incredible, like the impact that it's had on everybody. I mean, it's absolutely nuts. So why do you guys play D&D? I mean, what does it do for you? What sort of niche does it fill?
For me, I've always had a really imaginative mind. I always, as a kid, everyone likes to use their imagination to pretend like they live in another world or something. But I like to do it on such a degree that I would become kind of antisocial, right? I just like to be in my own head and create my own world. But I wanted to be able to do that with other people. And at the same time, I don't like large groups of people, right? I like being in somebody's house. I don't want to go to this, to
the club.
I don't like being in large crowds. So for me, D&D helps to express my imagination and my creative side in a group, obviously, right? We know it's a collaborative storytelling, but it kind of satisfies that need. I don't really like to call it escapism, but that need to feel like
it's escapism at its most heroic form.
Yeah, what could my life be like if there were no limitations? And for me, it's also a safe way to act out different types of personalities that maybe I feel I have that maybe wouldn't necessarily be accepted in our society, right? Like just punching someone in the face or doing all sorts of, activities. I might be judged, I might be thrown in jail, I might be punched back in the face in the real world. However, in D&D or any, RPG game, I can act those things out. I don't have restrictions besides what I give myself, really, besides mechanics. So I can do whatever I want, and it is such freedom to be able to act that out that I feel it's like really healing on a deep level, right? You can act out and heal through maybe like some emotional traumas that you've gone through that maybe in the real life, feel safe expressing. You can create a character that kind of mirrors that, and you can act out and express all that rage or that pain or that anger or whatever it is that you're feeling inside through this character.
Yeah.
Slightly detaching it enough to where it's safe for you to act it out, but you're still kind of getting that cathartic release if you need to.
100%. And I can't agree more with like just the cognitive component of it and the emotional satisfaction that you can get just from playing D&D. And I know for me, that's exactly what it was. That's why I love playing, is because it gave me a chance to fulfill all those urges that I had, to like, whether it's that impulsive anger, whether it's that like accent that you love to talk in, right, and that you just like want to talk in it in like a normal fashion.
Right.
And I'd say the biggest thing too that like I think a lot of people kind of forget about is the fact that it's safe, it's comfortable. The people that you play with are not people that are going to judge you. They don't give a shit. Like if you have a voice, try it. If you want to do something weird, do it. Nobody's going to judge you. And if they are going to judge you, then why are you playing D&D with them in the first place? So I really love it just for all of those reasons, and that's absolutely amazing. I couldn't agree with you more. Nick, what about yourself?
So I would say there's two different sides of it. I play D&D as a player for those exact reasons. You know, you get to explore these other characters that you have within you, right? Because even if you create this off the wall D&D character, there's a part of you in that. There's a part of you that is you, and you get to act that out. And
That's slightly frightening.
yeah, it's terrifying, but you get to explore that side of you a little bit.
Whether you want to admit it or not.
Yeah, exactly. And that part, if it's a good part of you, grows. If it's not, you know how to kind of compartmentalize that and put it away. But the reason why I DM, and it just comes down to a simple fact that really two things. I love to create worlds. I've always loved creating, you know, even when I was a kid playing with toys, right? I'd always have like this thematic element to when I was just in my room alone playing, right? So I love to create worlds. I love to build these characters, but D&D gives me an opportunity to have other people interact with them,
right?
And it's one of the coolest things whenever these players come back to me with these ideas. I want to go see this thing again. I want to go talk to this person again. I want to interact this way with this thing that you created. And just watching that interaction, having that come out, nothing's better than that. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm right with you on that one. Is that's part of what I love is the world building. As a kid, I mean, I grew up I'm much older than all of you, so I didn't have like the video games and stuff like that. So it was just my Star Wars figures, my He-Man, all that stuff, G.I. Joe, setting them up and creating a world. And I wouldn't just do that. I would go in and think of why everybody's there and interact with them and stuff like that. It was probably sounds weird now, but you know, that's kind of D&D. And then my brother got me started when I was about 8 into D&D because he's 4 years older. So it was just me wanting to be with my older brother and his friends, and that's how I got lumped into being killed all the time. And
Keith, how often do you get to play nowadays?
What's that?
How often do you get to play nowadays? Because I know you DM a lot. Do you ever get to play it? Yeah. Do you ever get to play?
I've actually played. I played one session of Curse of Strahd as a player, and
session?
Yeah, and I played in one session in a one shot. That's probably the only 2 times in the last 12 to 15 months. Yeah.
See, that is so.
Yeah, once your DM playing is over.
Yeah. But I enjoy the DMing much for the reasons that Nick does. That world building and really just the storytelling, just getting together with everybody, and you kind of created that world. And knowing, like he said, when they come back to interact with NPCs multiple times and they build relationships, it's just kind of cool being able to have that. I love that part of it.
Well, it's like that's your child, right? I mean, these are things that you've created, so you take a little pride in them. And I actually recently I had it was a semi one-off. My dad came down here to play with us, and it was great. My dad, he played kind of the leader of this tribe, but he was kind of like losing it a little bit. And so I introduced an NPC that was kind of his sage. It was this old like troglodyte that was like hunched over, like kind of decrepit, had a really interesting, cool backstory, and just had a fun dynamic to it. But he kind of was the person to guide my dad's character along. And I created it as a way for my dad to be a person of big significance, but also that he didn't have to memorize a 5-page backstory beforehand.
Right.
And so it was kind of like whenever he would slip up out my trog, the NPC would remind him of like, this is why we're doing this. And it just worked out perfectly, and it was so much fun. Well, so we had that session with my dad, and then we had the next session. A few of the people couldn't make it, so there's just 3 of the players. It was just an off week. We were traveling, whatever, with families. Well, we also want to play D&D. So I thought of kind of a little one-shot they could do, and it was this really interesting session where they all 3 did their own separate things, but it was kind of snippet sessions, like maybe like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here. So it's kind of like initiative, but while I was going back and forth between all the characters, and it kept a good flow to the game. But nonetheless, Trog, the NPC, went with one of the characters, and their primary mission was to shut down the specific item that was causing all this mayhem. And happened to come about that Trog was dying. Trog, basically, it was a circumstance where he ran in the room to conduct the ritual to shut something down. And then the person that was fighting the bad guy in the room kind of ran out of the room, was doing kind of like a walk in, walk out type approach. Well, Trog ended up dying. And it was on his last day death saving throw. And I was having the player that was running that section roll for him. And he rolled a 6. And I was like, you see the last breath leave Trog's body. And like he started like tearing up. I mean, he started crying. And then at the very beginning of the session, I do inspiration dice. He had a D6 inspiration die. And he looked at me and he's like, can I please use this on that roll? And then I was like, have you used it yet? He said, no. And I had him do it. And he rolled a 10, which was enough. Or excuse me, he rolled a 4, which was enough to get him to 10.
Right.
And he did that. And I just like saw, and like the 2 other people in the room were also like, what the fuck? And and immediately it was just kind of this like huge release, and to see the players have that much of an investment in like a character that like they don't know him, they've never like, you know, it's this make-believe world, but it was just as real as if it was you were there in person. Mm-hmm. And as a DM, like that to me, and I'm sure with you guys as well, is why you guys do it. It's why I do it, just to see that the connection with the players that the whole story has all together, which is absolutely amazing.
Honestly, for me, I don't DM that often. I prefer to DM one-shots as opposed to full campaigns. A lot of it out of fear, to be quite honest, of getting into a full campaign. But why I like to DM is to come up with the silliest, goofiest stories or monsters or plot lines, have my characters come up with just off-the-wall characters just to make it as ridiculous as we possibly can. So they can go, you know, pardon the phrase, balls to the wall in this one game, do whatever they want. Because if you're running a campaign, it's like, well, next session, we're going to have to deal with the consequences, right? But if you just do a one-shot, I just want them to go as crazy as they possibly can. I'm I'm very fast and loose with the rules, so one-shots work. You know,
all the dicks, all of them.
Work well.
1d4 piercing damage.
I'm like, is it cool? Okay, like let's just do it. Like that sounds awesome. Sure, you succeed. Like that's why I like DMing. Just what is the silliest thing that we can come up with? I just want to see as many people laughing as possible, and that is a good game of DMing for me. So slightly different DM skills. Probably drove him crazy when he played in one of my games.
No, I loved it. I played a character. Her name was Cindy.
Cindy Gabber.
She
was a barbarian.
And we didn't have any weapons. I found a broken bottle and some police tape. And I tied the police tape, and that became a mace or a flail. It was a flail. So yeah, it was awesome. And we ended up finding a scarecrow that took extra damage from fire. So she stuffed her shirt into the broken bottle, lit it on fire, and swung that around. Like it's amazing. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
I love it. Keith, I know that is the beauty about D&D, is that you can play so many different flavors of games. You can have games that are very tactical, and you know, the big extravagant maps. You can have the games that are this insane, very in-depth role-playing story. And then you can also have games like Critical Role, where it's kind of a little bit of both. Critical Role, I feel like this season is a bit more story heavy than the past season. But Keith, I know you and I have obviously talked a lot for many hours. What type of games, like what type of vibes do you traditionally like to run? I know you do like a lot of voices. I know you get into character quite a bit. But what is kind of the norm for you as a DM?
As a DM, I mean, obviously I'm going to go with whatever the players want. Especially if we're doing the full campaign, I kind of have an idea of what they want, what they prefer, whether it's role-playing, fighting, a mixture of both. One-shots, I'll talk to people, hey, what do you want to do this weekend if we can't do the main campaign? If they say, let's just kill stuff, then I'll do a classic dungeon crawl, make it that way. If they want a little something else, then yeah, we can put together more of a type of mystery or something to where they have to figure out maybe puzzles, or just find out who's behind certain things. So it really is just what the players want, but I love it all. And like our main campaign, my homebrew, is pretty much, I'd say 50-50 role play to fighting. It's a pretty mixture.
So I've got an interesting question, and I want to hear everybody's perspective. Nick, you and Keith, from a DM perspective, and then I definitely want to hear Melissa, I want to hear your perspective from a player's standpoint.
Yep.
Nick, not to put you on the spot, but what is your pet peeve whenever players do a specific action or something that they do at the table, whether it's to disrupt the game? Not calling anybody out, but what can you just, like, somebody does something, you're just like, oh my fucking Lord, that actually messes with you. No name dropping.
Yeah, no names.
No names.
By the way, the D&D Coalition is not held responsible for any slander that is to be heard in these next 30 to 45 seconds.
So my only pet peeves are things that distract from the game. If the players want their character to do something stupid or do something crazy in game, we'll roll some dice and see if it works or not. I don't care about that. My only problem are when there's distractions at the table, especially for something going on where it's like there's this big thing happening. There's this person distracted at the other end of the table. I'm going to have to explain this again. Focus. Everyone has their moment. Let them have their moment. Pay attention. You'll get your moment. Get off your goddamn phone for 5 minutes. Those are my only pet peeves at the table. I mean, if you ever watch any Crit Chicks, there are times where I just sit there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes while the girls just talk. They role play. But yeah, pet peeves is all about distractions. It's, make sure that if something's happening, you at least give that person the courtesy to invest a little time in that, because they're investing their time in that. They're going to invest their time when you have your moment. So just pay attention. That's really it.
Keith, what about you?
Well, I definitely agree with him as far as distractions go. But to go with something just different, my big one, which we could get way into, is metagaming.
Oh God.
I can't stand it. And I try and, it gets better over time. That's when you play the same group. But if I had to pinpoint just one specific thing, I do not, when it's somebody's turn in battle, I can't stand when everybody else starts saying, oh, don't do that. Oh no, he'll get an opportunity attack. Oh no, don't fireball, he's next to him. I can't stand that. I always have to tell people, hey, it's Jaro's turn, it's Elwin's turn, let them have a moment. Let them turn. That's my biggest one.
Metagaming is a huge one. So Melissa, I'm gonna put some pressure on you for this question. So what I want to hear also, just kind of pet peeves, like general table rules, but also want to hear, what can you not stand what Nick does? What actually bothers you?
I'm pulling out my list here.
Is it a voice? Is it like a circumstance? What is it?
I'll
let you do the Nick 1 second.
As far as just like being a player at the table, kind of mirroring what you guys said, like distractions, something that I really hate is when somebody always wants to make the game about them. If I'm having a moment, I really don't like if another player's like, do I overhear that? Can I interject? Can I walk up? Or if their character's not there and they're saying, wait a minute, what about this? Or how did you do that? It's like, can you let me play my character in my own way? If the DM wants to question something, let him, right? That is very frustrating because it's like they're not letting you have fun in your own way, right? That's very frustrating to me, probably the biggest frustration. Or when people don't respond to the information that's given, right? I ask a question, Nick provides me with some information, and maybe another player just kind of ignores it to push their own agenda forward. So I really like the collaborative aspect, and when someone has their own agenda that is more important than the group, that really bothers me. But everybody has a tendency to do that at some point. I think a lot of people are pretty good at checking that a little bit. Mm-hmm.
What I just gathered is that all three of you, it all boils down to one core concept, and that is listen. Listen.
Pay attention.
and respect.
Mhm.
Have the respect for your players, your DM, and everything.
Yeah, that's just the respect. It's
Yeah.
just everybody else, they're there for a reason. They're there to enjoy it, explore their character, explore themselves, and just have fun at the table.
Yeah. Now, Melissa.
As far as like DM to player, this isn't for you specifically, but I think just being
This is the stuff I wanted to hear.
I'll come to that next. No, is being able to trust your DM and trust your other players, right? Knowing that they're, to the best of their ability, going to make the same calls, so that way you know how to play as a character, right? If I know that I try to do something and he gives me a certain ruling, that ruling is going to stick for the rest of the campaign to the best of his ability. To me, that's important. If I can't trust the DM, it's just not going to work out.
I'm glad because I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
I'm glad you brought that up because trust, and that goes both ways. I love it as a DM when my players trust me and know that they don't need to question things because they do trust me, and it makes the game run smoother, and I feel better about it. And then, like you said, when they have that trust that you're going to do the right thing, game just runs so much smoother.
Yeah. Consistency is very key.
Yep.
I would say the thing that drives me the craziest about him is he creates these characters that he knows us as players, right? Not just our characters. So he creates NPCs to get under our skins as players.
Yes.
And there's a couple that are getting under my skin at the moment, and it's driving me crazy. So it's a good thing and a bad thing. And the thing he does right here, do you see this? See this? He does that when you're interacting with one of the NPCs. He'll do that, just like he's fucking doing right now. And he'll just nod and look at you, and he won't even say anything in character. And you're waiting, like, give me something. And he just sits there and waits and lets you sweat it out a little bit to where you're about to, like, okay, what do I do? And then he'll finally, like, jump back in. He likes to make us a little nervous and make us sweat it out a bit.
It's like going on a first date with somebody, and then you want to fill the silence, so you try to just like talk as much as possible. I get it.
Except the other person on the date knows, like, they're confident and they know that it's like playing with you.
Yeah, that tension it's palpable, and I like when it's palpable because
it is great.
Not only is it between me and the player, like all the other players are sitting there like waiting for whatever's going to happen, and I think that's a great way to tell a story. Is you use what you know, bring the players into it a little bit, make things that will engage them. So when I throw a Mars Dyer at the party, a big bad villain that they all can't stand, that it like, impacts them. Guy. Yeah, exactly. They have all the girls have a chat on Facebook that I'm not part of, and apparently after
that's good.
You all met Mars Dyer, this big bad villain. They talked about him for like days. Like, how do we handle this motherfucker?
Yeah, we were plotting like from session to session. We have a week between our sessions. We were plotting we need to talk about this. What are we gonna do? Like, and venting like, this guy is horrible. I mean, he's an ex-lover of my characters. Like, I'm personally vested in this. Like, we had to plot and come up with so many things because it just struck such a nerve and struck such a chord with all of us as characters, but also players, that we were like, no, we have to do something about this guy.
Now, isn't it wild how an imaginary game can affect you in your personal life?
Dude, this is a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's absolutely wonderful. I love it.
Satisfying as a DM, Nick, to know you've gotten to them like that they are that invested into these characters. That's got to be a great feeling.
They want to run away. They wanted to run away and flee. Like that right there, I was like, ooh. All
right.
Yes. It was very satisfying. I loved it.
So I want to get both your guys' input on this. Keith, you first. How do you deal with a player being mad at one of your NPCs? How do you separate that from the player not being mad at you, so Josh not being mad at Keith, but Josh's player being mad at said NPC. How do you separate that and make sure that your players don't take anything too personally?
Well, I think we're pretty good with that because most of us have played together for a while. As you know, Josh is newer. He's played about 3 or 4 sessions with us, but he's used to D&D and he understands the role play aspect of it. But I love it when the players get angry with NPCs.
How do you separate that from them being mad at you, though?
What's that?
How do you separate that from them being mad at you?
I mean, I just assume they're mad at the NPC. If they're ever upset with me, I mean, I'm an open book completely, and I'm very open. And as we've discussed before, I always text or talk. They'll stick around after the session. We'll talk about it. We'll text about it. And I always ask them, what did you think of the session? What did you think about this? And I've asked because my brother absolutely hates one of my NPCs and wants to kill him for no other reason, just that he didn't like his attitude. So this is one of their plots. And he was just a regular NPC that I didn't really plan a whole lot for. But then that makes me think, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to make him a lot bigger than I had planned. And it's going to be a bigger issue for you down the line. You know, I just embellished in it, really. But as far as separating it, I just assume they're mad at the NPCs. And we do discuss it afterwards, if ever. But luckily, we've never had an issue like that come up, as far as I know.
Yeah. So, Nick, you play with several beautiful, wonderful, talented women that are full of estrogen and other happy hormones. What do you do whenever one of your a lot of testosterone? What do you do whenever one of your players gets irate with a PC, and how do you separate you talking derogatory to a player versus that NPC being patronizing?
Yeah, and a specific example comes to mind, but I'll talk that a little bit. But really, in this, it all starts, and if anybody's watching and you want to DM, do a session 0. Yeah. Session 0 is where it starts. Session 0 is where you lay it all out and say, hey, this is the campaign that I run. This is what you're going to run into. You're going to run into instances where my NPCs are assholes to your characters. So, I mean, all my players knew at the beginning that they were going to run into situations where I would be playing characters that would interact that way with them. So when it does happen, and I have seen, like, visual, tangible anger at the table towards Marstair, he'll come up a little bit, but at the end of the day, and really the great thing about the table that I DM for, they're all role players. Every single one of them, they get into character and they role play, and they know that I'm a role player as well. So when I'm playing a role, I'm playing that character. It's not Nick talking, right? Yeah. I love all of them. I tell them that all the time. They're all great. I love every single one of them for their own, individual things. And when that does come up, when that response happens, and I get that visual or that clap back, we all know it's in character. Yeah. And it really started at session 0, saying, hey, what are you all comfortable with? How far can I take these certain things? And we kind of talked about it before. It's a safe space. It's supposed to be comfortable, even when the characters aren't comfortable. The players should be. Yeah. So really knowing the boundaries, knowing how far you can push things before a player is affected. As a DM, that's super important. So session 0 is 100% is where it starts. But also being able to read the table. So if things are starting to go a certain way, you notice somebody's starting to act a little off, not a character, but a player, act a little off. Adjust a little bit, right? Adjust what's happening to kind of make sure that, it doesn't go beyond what they're willing to do or what they're willing to take part of.
We talked with the guys from It's a Mimic, and that's one thing that they really stressed on is session 0, because you need to know your players' boundaries. Yep. And for example, I remember, Keith, you probably remember this, but they said that they were good with women, with children, with a lot of terrible things, but one person couldn't do anything but teeth. They just didn't like teeth. So that was like a legit phobia for them. So that was the thing. And I think at the end of the day, like, communication just is everything, you know, being comfortable with one another. Because at the end of the day, when we're sitting here at the table and I'm looking around because I've got my table set up right now, it's all about comfortability, and it's all about trusting one another and knowing that, like, if you want to do something bizarre and off the wall, you can do it. Nobody's going to say anything about it. Nobody's going to think twice about it. And they're going to all know that it's your character. Mm-hmm. And I recently, as of last week, I joined a group. One of my players actually contacted me, and he's like, "Hey man, I want to DM." And he's very theatrical. He has an accent, a really good accent. And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" And he asked me if I wanted to play in it, and I was just like, "Of course I do." And so we did our first session last Wednesday, and my girlfriend actually played for the very first time in the group, and it went absolutely incredible. And so I was thinking to myself, I was like, you know what, I don't get to play that often. Like, let's really put something into this character, like something I can stick with and something I can really enjoy and have fun with. And so I basically am in this automaton that it's a robot, essentially, that's a cleric that's really dense and kind of dumb, but nonetheless just has a really good heart. And the way that I act in person, it's like me on steroids. Like, everything that I do is just much more like exaggerated, and everybody just loved it and had fun. And there's a lot of new people at the table, so I did everything I could to kind of get them involved and get them comfortable with role playing. Like, nobody was doing an accent, and I was just kind of like new to the whole thing. And I wanted to do that to show them, like, hey, you can be fucking weird. You can say weird shit. You can do weird things. It's fine. We're all friends here. And it was just really cool, like, afterwards and at the break and everything, hearing everybody say, like, "Oh yeah, Scrag when he said this," and I was like, "Oh yeah," and like I was almost like remembering as if I was watching a movie or something. So it's nice to be able to kind of like not only separate that in the heat of the moment from your personal self, but also to reflect on it and realize, like, hey, we were just players having fun. So I think that's very important, and I think that's something that should always be discussed too at a session zero, because at the end of it, some people might not be comfortable with a role play heavy group. Some people might not like that. My best friend, he is an amazing guy, but he just hates role playing. Won't do it. Won't talk in first person. But nonetheless, I think it's definitely important to have those sorts of things. Keith, I know we've talked to you about session zeros. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, it's a good thing. I try and do it every time now. I didn't a long time ago, but I do now because it is a great, useful tool just to talk about the campaign itself and exactly, like they said, how it's going to be run, what type of campaign it's going to be, what they're comfortable with, how open they are with bringing their backstories into it. Because as you know, I love bringing backstories into it. And Nick, I want to ask you about that with the Crit Chicks, but yeah, because I'm big on those backstories, and I definitely always love to find out who's comfortable with it and who's not, because I'm going to try and throw some crazy stuff or emotional stuff or stuff to really get them into it. Like, I can say it now because we just had it on our last session, but like my brother, he was open to anything with his backstory, and his supposedly wife and daughter were killed in a raid on his village. So just recently, in the last session, I had when he's an elf, so he was just resting at night, wasn't sleeping, and they were in kind of this enchanted forest, and I described the scene of how this figure started coming at him. It started giggling, the blonde hair. All of a sudden, she looked up. She called out to him as dad, and and I went through this whole scene with him, and I could see him getting pulled into it, and then all of a sudden it just kind of whisked away. So I've got plans for that, but then just seeing how they're okay with stuff like that is a big thing, and that starts, like you said, at session zero. That's why you kind of need to have it. Nick said it too, just to find out what all is on the table, how bad it can get, or how good, how fun, how just creative you can get with the whole session as a whole.
So Keith, what do you whenever you do things like that, and obviously that was a awesome that was a powerful experience that you had with your own brother, which I'm sure that's not something that you've seen before in the past. When do you know to push in, and when do you know to kind of pump the brakes a little bit?
Like Nick said, reading the table but also knowing ahead of time what everybody's comfortable with. When everybody says I'm all in with my backstory, just because they'll give me some backstory, I'll give them some ideas to feed off of it based on the storyline that I have for the world that I built, and kind of mesh it together. And they'll say, hey, that sounds great. And then, as long as they're okay with me doing whatever, I'll do it. I'll bring it out in session. But then again, communication, finding out after the session how everybody thought it went, any concerns they might have, stuff like that. And we always discuss it.
So, Melissa, this kind of sparks question along these lines. So, obviously, women in the D&D community, it's growing dramatically, but the all women group, it's absolutely incredible. It's rare. I mean, there's you, and then there's the all natural 20s that kind of do this. So feeding into like the session 0 and the when to dig in as a DM, when to really pull on those emotional strings. And if you feel free not to answer this at all, but if there was something very sensitive that you quite frankly don't want to talk about, it's nobody's business, that you don't want to relive or experience during a DM session, but something that's typically discussed at a session 0, how would you address that issue?
Like if it was happening in game?
If it's something that you personally were not comfortable with, but you did not want to speak up about.
Well, that wouldn't happen with me because I am very vocal, but so I can't speak on this from my own perspective because I like taking all of my past traumas and putting them into my players and working through them. Like when you have a toothache, I'm the kind of person that like rubs at it, right? I am. So I like that. Like my character, without going into too much, my character right now has undergone some intense traumas in her life that are, if and when they come up, and before they come up, I'm going to sit down with the rest of the women, the rest of the players off camera and talk to them and say, this is a topic that's going to be brought up. It is going to be triggering. It just is. Like, I'm already getting goosebumps. How can you all feel safe when this is brought up? And if you don't feel safe, how can we still bring up my character's backstory? So being respectful to me, but also not overstepping a boundary for you. So opening up that line of communication and talking about it. And also, since we stream, we have to be very aware of people that are watching, right? I don't want somebody to be watching at home and all of a sudden be highly triggered. We don't dive too deep into, we talk about a broad spectrum of potentially triggering things, but we don't get too deep into any of them. And I think we do that well. We just kind of touch on possibly triggering or sensitive topics. I do think there will be some episodes where we probably go a little bit deeper. We might just do a disclaimer at the beginning of that episode. If I was getting triggered in a game by something else that was going on and I started getting really uncomfortable, I would act it out by my character, right? Since I do put so much of myself into my characters, I do get triggered and I do take things personal.
Yeah.
I am one of those people that do that, but I have to remember that I want to work these things out. So instead of saying, oh, time out, Melissa has a problem with this, I say, okay, you have a problem with this, but how can you deal with it in your character? I'm going to take my character, I'm going to approach somebody who's talking about it, who's going through a hard time, and I'm going to take my character and address the situation in game. I'm going to try to role play through this potentially triggering moment in game, see if we can work it out that way. And I found from doing that in previous games, everyone most of the time feels safe doing it with their character, right? Because they're slightly detached. They know that it's not them, so they can talk about it in game. And also, this kind of goes back to the, how do you not take things personal? Be friends outside of your game. We as a channel do all sorts of non-streamed things. We have potlucks, we have, pool parties, we do birthdays together. We make sure that we are a family and that we can connect as Melissa and Nick, or, whomever.
And anybody that follows you on Instagram, I'm sure, sees that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, so we know, like, we do have a real connection. So that way, when it's in game, there is no question of, I know that we're friends, so I know that you wouldn't talk to me this way. We are acting, and it's very clear that that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and you are a very, and not to be cliche, but you are a very strong woman. You're a very powerful role player, and
thank you.
When you speak, it's like people other than Nick shut the fuck up and they listen. They pay attention, and you're not afraid to voice your opinion, and that's something to be sought after, and that's something that a lot of people, men and women both, that they admire. And so, kind of going back a little bit, talking on the topic of like heroic escapism, like that's what D&D can be, and it can be something that like you're dealing with trauma that you've never been able to kind of deal with or confront in the past before. One thing that I would encourage you to do, because there's a lot of things near and dear to my heart with mental health that I've encountered with D&D as a creative outlet. There are girls out there that have dealt with that, with these actual terrible traumas in real life, and it might actually do the opposite of what you're thinking. It might actually inspire them. It might actually help them. If you can act that out, and if you can do these sorts of things, that showing a character who's been beaten, been brought down to absolutely nothing, and come out on top of everything. And so what I will, I guess, point of this whole spiel is don't ever be afraid to shy away from that. And Nick, as long as your girls are comfortable with it, don't be afraid to go down that revenue, because I think that is something that people will resonate with. People will love it. And at the end of the day, the reason why this community is so great is because we all connect with one another in one way, shape, or form. So I encourage you guys to definitely put another layer on the table. Mm-hmm. Put an extra layer of emotion.
I think we definitely will, and I don't think that either of us will shy away. So I'm outside of here. I'm a yoga instructor, so I have training of being very sensitive to what people are going through, right? That's kind of the whole thing. Be very aware. But a lot of times in that community, it's putting a blanket over it or kind of not even addressing that situation, and I am not about that. So I do think that it can be very healing for people, right? I have undergone, physical trauma and things like that, and that's what my character has gone through as well. So not only would it be healing for me to do it, but I know that other people that are watching can be healed, but I'm also not going to just assume that they're ready for that. Yeah. So just giving them a little bit of a warning, giving them a chance to, maybe you don't want to watch this episode, or just be ready for it, because there's nothing like not expecting to be triggered, being triggered and not being prepared, but I don't think we'll shy away. Yeah. We'll do it very respectfully.
Absolutely. And the whole reason I want to bring that up is because you guys have such a unique experience and unique dynamic where you guys have the ability, and I will 100% support you guys and shout your guys' name at the top of the balcony. But what you're doing and the level of talent that you have at your table is absolutely phenomenal. And I know a lot of people love it. And I think that it can be something just as powerful as Critical Role. And that's very rare to see. So I applaud you guys and everything that you have done. And I encourage you to keep doing it more. So, but that is absolutely incredible. Keith.
Yes.
Controversial issues as far as the direction of, I guess, there's been a lot of, this is kind of what I've heard within my stratosphere, the direction in which D&D is going, kind of with the pickup games, with Adventures League. There's a lot of, I know you don't do a lot of Adventures League, but there's a lot of people that are very upset with kind of how that's taking a turn and how it's D&D's becoming, in a way, at game shops, kind of more of like a pick-up, stop-in game, kill shit, get loot, Diablo style, let's do this. How do you think that as a DM, bringing someone in that is a new player, how do you think you can kind of like separate that?
Communication and having that session 0. Talking to him, especially when it's a new player like Josh. When he came in, I mean, we had discussions before he even came in the first session. I talked to him about how our campaign was run, how the other players were, and I talked to them about him coming in. And then he discussed his type of style of play and what he thought he could bring to the table. So it's just having those open discussions with people before you even really bring them in. If you just randomly bring someone into your table without talking about anything like that, then you run into the possible situations that you're talking about happening. So definitely talk to people. I'm huge. I mean, at my job and in D&D, I'm huge about communication. I think that is not only the most important thing in any aspect of life, but one of the more neglected ones too. So
yeah. Nick, I know you said that you kind of had like a vetting process for you actually like you interviewed people for your show, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, how many people like applicants were there that you had to choose between, and what was kind of like your vetting process of selecting who would be a good fit for the show?
So really, it was all social media. I think when we cast originally, we had 3 already ready to go that were part of the channel or close to the channel at that point. So we needed 3 other players because my perfect table count is 6. I like 6 players.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted 3 more players. So we reached out on Facebook and we did this post on D&D Phoenix, Arizona, and all that. And people who were interested, they would communicate with me directly, and we'd go back and forth, talk, and it really was finding out. Really, all I really cared about was dedication, right? My whole thing when I started Crit Chicks is like I don't give 2 shits if it's 6 girls, 6 dudes, 2 girls, 4 dudes. I don't care. I want 6 good players.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be about the gender of the players. I want D&D players. So it turned from a focus of like, what pretty face can I put on screen to who's
going to be invested?
Yeah. How can we showcase great players who happen to be female and then inspire more women to play? Because this is a great game. This is a great community that we live in. And kind of like what you guys were talking about before, that if you have things you need to work out, this is a fantastic venue to do that in. If you have a table that you can trust and you have to bring some shit to that game and work through it with your friends, what better way to do it than by make believe, right? And
was it always Crit Chicks though? Like whenever you started the show initially, was it always like, I'm gonna do Crit Chicks?
No, so we went through a few different like name changes. Funny enough, one of the first ideas was All Natural 20s, and someone Googled that and they were like, "Oh, well that's taken. We can't do that." My idea,
shout out
on my Google Drive, it's still my folder for the campaign is still the name. It's Girls Night Out, but the night is KNIGHT. But they chose Crit Chicks. So it went through a few different iterations at first, and then the girls, obviously I had no input. The girls chose Crit Chicks.
Okay, yeah, that's I mean, obviously it's stuck because people absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So explain to us a little bit. So we got Crit Chicks, and I know you play in a group. Where did we got a lot of names flying around. Where did Dice Ministries? How did that form? Like, is that so? Dice Ministries is you, correct?
Well, Dice Ministry, and this is a big shout out to our channel creator, Len Duran. He reached out on kind of like we did for Crit Chicks. He posted something on Facebook one day and was like, I want to start a stream. I want to start playing D&D on stream. And the name Dice Ministry was his brainchild. This is the channel name, Dice Ministry. I want to play this. And I was one of the people that wanted to play on that. And he interviewed me. He said the reason why I got the gig was because I was drinking a glass of whiskey when he did the Skype call. So Dice Ministry really, yes, yeah. I I finished mine. Dice Ministry, the name and the channel itself is his brainchild. And if you ever get a chance to have him on, please do. But we scare him all the time because he'll say, like, I've built this channel. It's like, dude, no, you've built a family. And you say that to him, and he just, like, you see he goes pale, you know. But, yeah, Len is really the creator of it. And he's done a great job of bringing good people together that move everything forward. So, yeah, Dice Ministry is him. He created it, but he's really done a really good job of letting us kind of move it forward with him, and he kind of leads us in the direction that he wants it to take. Wants it to go. Yeah.
Shout out, Len. You did a great job. Everybody appreciates what you did, man. Seriously, it's these groups that are being put together, and the quality of the streams is always increasing, and the production you guys put on. I mean, I know you guys basically take 2 tables, put them in like an L, and then you have you sitting up at the side, and you guys have like backdrops and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like a production. If you guys have, if people listening out there have not watched this show, you guys got to check it out because it is absolutely phenomenal. And also, I got to mention that your page, RPG Yogi, is absolutely incredible. I love it. Like,
thank you so much.
Like the people that you always like interact with the most, like pop up first in your story. So I always see like yours very first, like on the one of the first ones that pops up. But I love what people do in this community because very seldomly are people allowed to do this as a full-time gig, full-time job. But a lot of the times people usually have interesting backgrounds in what they actually do. I know I opened one the other day and you were welding something.
Yeah, I was.
So what the heck was that about?
So like I said, I'm a yoga instructor as well, and there's something called an inversion bench where you pretty much, or a headstand bench. It's like a small 4-legged prop to where you, sounds horrible, you put your head in it and you do a handstand, right? Or you do a headstand, but your head doesn't touch the ground, so it keeps you from putting all that pressure on your head. I really want one. But they're like $200. Yeah, I can spend that on it, but I am much more of a person that's like, you know what, I can make that. Yeah. So my brother's an electrician. He got an old wire dolly, and he was like, here's this, here's my tools. And I took that thing apart, grinded it down, took what I needed, re-welded it together, and now I have this headstand bench for myself.
That's badass. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to deviate the conversation. I saw that and it was in my head, and I was like, what the hell was she doing? But as far as the show goes, like in the channel and everything, what are your guys' goals? Like, what are your agendas as far as what you want to see? And Keith, I'd like to hear your opinion too, because I know you and I have the privilege of talking a lot off screen. But I just want to kind of hear out loud, like, what do you guys want to do? What's the end game with this?
So my end game is to get that Critical Role money and then retire, you know, and play D&D for the rest of my life. That's my 100% honest end game. But no, like with the channel, it's I always said it's about playing D&D. That's what I want to do. I want to play D&D. But we've kind of screwed that over a little bit. We've kind of put ourselves out there as, you know, one of the 2 all-female channels or streams with Crit Chicks, you know, female players at least.
Which they're excellent players, so nothing wrong with that.
They are excellent players, absolutely. But as much as I try to fight the idea that we're doing anything but playing D&D, I do hope to see more players. I'm a big believer that D&D is not for everybody, but if more people just gave it a shot, more people would play and they'd benefit from that. And a big part of that for me personally is veterans. 100% veterans, because I mean, from day one of boot camp to the day I get out of the Marine Corps, it was all about taking that empathy that you have in your heart and stamping it out and getting rid of it. Because, you know, I was in the infantry, right? And, you know, to put too fine a point on it, you know, our whole job was to go overseas and fight the enemies of America, right? Yeah. A lot of veterans and a lot of problems that you see, and I was one of them, when they get out of the military, they don't know how to express or feel empathy anymore. just to give you a crazy number of how bad it is for people, my battalion lost 10 Marines on my first deployment. We lost 10 Marines. That's 1,000 Marines. Out of 1,000 Marines, we lost 10. I got out in 2011. Since then, 33 have died, have committed suicide. So I want to see more vets play. I want to see more of them get into it and sit at a table and realize, hey, I have to make sure everyone's having fun with me. They're all doing this thing together. And I really think it can help a lot of people coming out of the military and transition back to the civilian world. It helped me. I struggled for 6-7 years before I found D&D, and then I had my daughter, and then don't care about that life anymore. But it's I think D&D as an outlet for a lot of those things. I think what we do can really show people that, and more people can play and heal with it. Yeah. And that's really what I want to see.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And once again, I appreciate everything you've done. I mean, that's losing friends is. I've got several friends that were in the military, and it's never an easy thing to talk about. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as far as the topic of suicide goes, my brother committed suicide about 2 years ago, and he was the one that taught me how to play D&D. He's the one that got me into all of this, and he's 1 year older than me. He's my best friend. We were thick as thieves, and it's kind of one of those things. Whenever it happens to somebody that you know, it becomes more than just a statistic. Mm-hmm. It becomes like something that nobody has the right answer for, and there's not a right answer for it. And it's something that's incredibly, needless to say, to put it lightly, it's difficult to talk about. And I think that if people can address that level of depression, or people can address that level of loneliness with a game that makes people sit down together for 3 hours, 4 hours, and just be somebody else, if that can help even one person, mm-hmm. I mean, that's going to change the life of so many. And for me, like what you just said, getting veterans to play, and for the reason of mental health and everything, that sits deep within me as well. And I couldn't agree more with you, man, because it's something that's infallible and that nobody knows how to address. But I think D&D does a good job. And personally, Critical Role brought me out of, after my brother committed suicide, I didn't play for about a year. And then I was actually at the gym one day. I was on the treadmill, and I was just doing some cardio, and I looked up I wonder if there's any people that play D&D online. And that's actually, I YouTubed it, and that's when I found Critical Role. And another testament as to why they've affected so many lives. I mean, we got a Vecna shirt on right now, but not only them, but just D&D as a whole. And it's absolutely incredible, and I love it. But to get back to the question at hand, Melissa, what's your kind of motive behind all of this?
Well, I mean, originally I just started playing because I became obsessed with the game. Well, I did. When we first played together, my character became a little infatuated with his character. But I just started playing because I needed the same thing. I needed an outlet. I needed something. I was being reclusive. I was depressed. I had anxiety. I didn't really want to necessarily be alive anymore. And I needed something. Like, it was like, you need to do something. And this was just like literally being forced to me via my phone, like, here. So I found
the universe was sending you a message.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, fine. So for me, originally, it was just to have something to do, to literally have something to get me out of my house and to make friends again. Being around people and making friends is not the easiest thing for me, but doing it as a character, I can do that because it's not really Melissa. It's, Yavanna or Lilith or whatever.
That blows my mind because you're so outgoing.
Well, that's what you see. That's this face, right? And I am to a certain degree, but I need a safe way to do it. And doing that through a character or through D&D gives me a purpose. I need a purpose and a friendship, right? So I needed a community that wouldn't make fun of me for being a big old nerd, right? And they do, but in the best way possible. Like, we all make fun of each other for being nerds, but they're just as big of a nerd as I am.
Not me.
He is.
I'm not.
Nah, we're actually, Melissa, you're actually the biggest nerd out of all of us. We're not nerds.
Yeah, you guys, it's all me. I'm alone. So for me, originally, it was just for fun, but I am an entrepreneur. If I enjoy something, I want to make money doing it. I grew up with a dad that had like 50 small businesses, right?
That's
so
us.
I am like, yeah, he's like, if you have a passion for something, how can you make a profit off of that? And some people that I've talked to really don't like that aspect of what I do or what we do as a channel. They're, they want to play D&D just for fun, and that's great. Mm-hmm. But I don't. I want to play it for fun, and that's already a lockdown. I already have a fun time playing it. Now we're putting in a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money.
Monetize it. Yeah.
To amp up our production value, and if that isn't monetized, to me, that means we're doing something wrong. Not in a bad way, but it's like, how can we adjust this? So yeah, I want Dice Ministry to be a huge channel. I want it to have, like, absorb other smaller games, other businesses, and I want to be able to do this as my career. Like, what could be better than that? What could be better than playing D&D, talking about nerdy things with the people that I enjoy being around the most?
So Melissa, you said something that people wouldn't agree with it. Don't for one second think that you wanting to create some sort of systematized organization for people to enjoy a creative outlet, don't ever feel for 1 second ashamed of that you want to make a living doing that.
I don't.
Because the fact of the matter is that, like, yes, I think all of us here can understand, like, wanting to monetize something like this. Mm-hmm. And to the outside world, it might sound like, oh, they're in for the money. But that's so far from the truth. It's all about the impact. It's all about the community. It's all about getting people involved. And yes, the money that's going to put food on our table. That's going to, do those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, it's all about the community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if the money's not there, you're still going to be playing.
Exactly.
Of course. But if the money is there, you have more time to spend playing and to come up with this content.
Yeah.
And to me, if we can monetize it, it'll give us more opportunities to reach out to charities, to reach out to, the Boys and Girls Club, reach out to different venues and organizations that we can then introduce storytelling to and bring that, therapeutic aspect of D&D to those communities. If we don't monetize it, we could still do that, but it would be really hard, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we all work like multiple jobs, some of us, or kids, wives, whatever. We don't have the time and energy to do that now.
Yeah.
Yet, I think
your wife might be less likely to be like, hey, what the hell are you doing spending 5 hours every Wednesday night with these girls? Well, baby, I'm making $100 an hour. Oh, okay, well, have fun. Yeah.
Well, she's part of the channel, so it's okay.
My wife actually is on Crit Chicks. My wife is, she plays.
I was saying hypothetically.
Hypothetically, yeah.
But Keith, what's I've never asked you this. What is your goal with Fire and Dice? I mean, what's the ultimate end game?
Really, I mean, I just created it because of my love for D&D, enjoy playing the game. And really, I just want to, my main goal, if I had to have a goal, of course, I would love to play. I eventually want to stream our games. I'm not quite ready for that yet, just because of the people at the table and getting it. And I want it to be much like Crit Chicks. They have a good production. They have, like you said, the backgrounds. They have the nice setup and stuff like that. That's what I'd like. That's where I'd like to be before we start doing that. But in the long run, it's mainly about just reaching and playing with as many people as possible. I think I've talked to you about that before. I've reached out to the local library of setting up a kids program to where I DM for children, and that's going well. And I think we're going to be there pretty soon, getting to have young youths in the area coming and playing at the library.
Awesome.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
I started a club at my work too, because we have this social media thing at work. So I started that, and that's got about 60-some members there too, and it's creating for everybody to kind of get together and discuss that, because we have offices in Pensacola, here in Virginia where I'm at. We've got branches all over, the United States and out. So it's reaching a bunch of people and bringing them together that way too. So that's really the ultimate goal, is just mainly introduce it to as many people as possible. Myself, play with as many people as possible. And if something like that streaming, if that happens down the road, then that would be great too.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more, man. That's absolutely awesome. By the way, on that note, are you guys going to Gen Con? I think I already asked you, Melissa. No?
Yeah. Unfortunately not. It's really far for us, and we have a huge channel. We are doing some local conventions this year. The two of us and a few other people are going to be doing a Tucson Comic-Con. We'll have a booth there to represent Dice Ministry, and a few of myself and a few of the other women make dice jewelry, dice bags, things like that that we'll be selling. So we're definitely getting like the local market, and then we would love to do Gen Con. We would love to do all of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I know Gen Con's become such a huge, massive monster at this day and age. One thing that I know I've been talking to Jim about, I think I talked to you about it too, Keith, but GaryCon up in Wisconsin in the fall or in the spring. I know that there is a lot of the social media pages that are going to be attending that. Yep. And it's not as crazy and as insane as Gen Con, but nonetheless, I think that'd be a good experience to like meet up with everybody. But I know Keith and I will be going. We're going to be setting up a one shot. We're going to be trying. That's actually DM'd by one of his fellow players, Marshmallow, Joshua.
Well, we should have full one shots.
Yeah, we're at the rate that it's going. We kind of put some feelers out there, and then every person that basically we asked like who's going to Gen Con, and every person that said yes, we asked them like, hey, would you be interested in playing a one shot? Keith, the Fire and Dice, we're putting this on, and every person was like, yes. When and where? So there's like
that's what's so great about this community.
I know, it's insane. So hopefully we can like. It was kind of an overwhelming. So I was expecting this to be something like we were going to do in the hotel room, just like have fun with. But now it's kind of starting to sound like it might be a little event of its own. Yeah. So we'll definitely be filming it, working on having like a professional videographer there to capture some good footage. But I think it'll be really interesting to see like some of people's favorite pages. Like, holy shit, they're playing D&D. Like, it'd be fun for them to watch that. So I think that'd be really neat. And that's kind of like where my passion lies with all this is my vision is I love talking with people that can also affect other people. And I love having those people meet up and talk together because things like this, it's Keith might have, 5, 6, 7,000 followers. You guys might have several thousand followers between your name. I might have a measly 1,000 or whatever. But together, we can spread such a larger, greater message to just have all ships rise together. And that's kind of like where my mindset was. It's like, I don't give a shit if people follow the D&D Coalition. But if somebody can find another page that helps them in some way, shape, or form, whether it's with their mental health, their physical health, whatever the hell it is, then awesome. So be it. My job is done. That's it. Mm-hmm. So, and people in this community resound with that. And it's awesome. So, Melissa, I know you've got a obligation you have to fulfill. I apologize about the technical difficulties. It's been an absolute nightmare. But I wanted to close out. I know Keith's got a question for you as well. But both of you guys, if you could play with one person, past, present, future, whatever, dead or alive, doesn't matter, who would it be?
You could play one? Is that what you said?
If you could play with them, if they could DM for you, if you could DM for them, whatever.
I would love to DM for J.R.R. Tolkien. Oh. Not play for him, but DM or GM for him.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That would be intense.
That would be really intense.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
Wow, that blew my mind. I'm gonna go with just the first person that popped into my head, and I don't know why this person did. Les Claypool. Do you guys know who that is?
No.
He's the main singer and bassist for Primus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I have heard. I didn't know the names of the.
He is a very odd and interesting. He's written a couple books. Very odd artist. I've always thought it'd be really. He's very into fishing. I always thought it'd be really cool to go fishing with him. But I think playing a game with him would be bonkers. I think he would take it to a level that I wouldn't even think to. His mind is so odd but so artistic that I think he would kind of broaden the my idea of what role playing could be.
That's awesome. Very. I think that's probably the most unique answer you got, Keith.
Yeah, I think so. Were they the band that sang like a song? I think like Pork Soda or something like that, or
and it's also it's the name of the album.
I gotta look this shit up. What's it called? Fork Soda?
That's the name of the album. The band is Primus, Primus.
All right.
I'm sure you've heard some of their stuff.
If you ever watch South Park, they're the band that does the intro to South Park. That's Primus.
Oh, okay, yeah. I got it. Now, Keith, I know you had a question too.
Just a real quick question for each of you. What is your favorite PC that you've ever used?
I know mine. I already know mine. His name was what?
Like the race class combo. The character was. I
have a specific name. His name was Professor Pomeroy Pomplamoose, and he spoke like this. It was the first game he ever DM'd that I played in.
Nick.
She was a guest character on Crit Chicks before she was a full-time cast member. Yeah.
He was a human, but he was a glamour bard.
Oh, nice.
And he did spoken word poetry.
Why?
Why not? He was obnoxious and amazing. He was based off of Gilderoy Lockhart from Harry Potter, amplified and even more charismatic. He was the best. I love bards. I play them all the time. They're my favorite. They're my favorite class. And I like playing human. I'm boring like that.
It's what you right.
Nick, have they ever ran into that NPC in your world?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. And when she was coming onto the show full time, it was like, "Are you gonna play Pomeroy?" And I was like, "No.
Veto.
No. I'd say my favorite character my favorite PC.
It could be NPC, Nick, or excuse me, Keith.
Yeah, I wanted to know PC.
Oh, yeah, PC. Okay. PC.
Yeah.
So it's a toss-up. My first player character, he's an Azamar fighter, but he's my first. Like he was the first one, and he was awesome. I loved him. But I think honestly, my favorite PC ever was the player or the character I played on Natural One, our Sunday show. His name was Delane. I like playing Azamar. He was an Azamar blood hunter, so I took the Critical Role class. He was Order of the Profane Soul, so he's basically a warlock blood hunter, and he did not like the gods at all. He was dark. He was very not me, but I think what I liked most about him were the moments that we had with the other players. Her first character on Dice Ministry, I basically turned her away from her god just from a conversation with that character. Away from her god. He was special. I mean, when he died, because I had to leave the show because of work. The Sunday show, Len and I, the DM of that game, we had this whole plot mixed up where when he died, this god that they've been kind of fighting against would take over his body. He'd become level 20 and he'd fight the rest of the party. So yeah, and we were sitting there at the table just talking, and you know, and me and the god were talking back and forth, and he goes, "All right, it's time, let's do this." And Len and I got up. I walked around to the DM seat and I sat down, and they had to fight Delane.
We were like, what just happened?
Yeah. Everyone at the table was crying. Everybody, and I would do things like I would knock a player unconscious and say, he doesn't like this. He really doesn't like this, you know. And oh man, just the reactions that we all got, man. And it was a great ending to a great character. And he
what
will
the
always.
Shit, Keith? Why didn't you ask this earlier? I've got like 15 questions I want to ask now.
Well, you know where we are. We can do another one. It's fine. Not a big deal.
We will. And oh shit, I got so many questions I want to ask. That's so badass. Okay. Well, guys, seriously, thank you so much for doing this. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I hope all of you guys still tune in. Go ahead, each of you, run through, and where can we find you at? Melissa, go.
Yep. RPG_Yogi on Instagram. You can follow the channel at Dice Ministry on Instagram, one word, and on YouTube. I also sell stuff on Etsy, The Chic Fae, CHICFEY.
And then Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at Emo Azamar, EMOAASM, however you spell Azamar. I just lost it.
AASIMAR.
Thank you. That one.
I spelled it wrong like 15 times. It's okay.
Yeah. So on Twitter and Instagram, mainly Instagram, but both those you can find me. Yeah.
Keith, my beautiful bearded brother. Your beautiful bearded brother.
You can find me at fire.and.dice on Instagram, and then fire and dice on YouTube.
Hashtag Friday Night Fights. And I am. Those are badass, by the way. The last one that you did was fucking awesome. That was cool.
My season, but
yeah, unfortunately, but whatever. And I am Cameron. You guys can find me at DnD.Coalition on Instagram. At D&D the D&D Coalition everywhere else. I've been debating on changing my name. What do you guys think about that? Should I change it to the D&D Coalition?
I think it's good
forward to that.
Everything else is the D&D Coalition, and except for my Instagram. I've been debating on changing it. But regardless, thank you guys for tuning in. Dice Ministries, both of you guys, Melissa, Nick, Keith, I appreciate all you guys. A lot of good conversations. We'll definitely be speaking again soon.
Look forward to it. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. I love the show. Keep doing what you're doing. It's great.
Dude, and one of these days, I'm going to have Joseph, one of my players. Joe, I'm calling you out. I'm going to have him sitting here helping me run this because I'm so technologically challenged that it's not even funny. So if any of you guys are in the Tampa Bay area, please give me a call, message me. I need your help. But nonetheless, thank you guys. We'll be chatting soon, and tune in next time. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye.